Broadcasting from the studios of WKEN, where every day it's the weekend. It's the Ken Calvert Show with your host, Ken Calvert.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the casual studios of WKEN, where every day it's the weekend, and actually it is the weekend. Coming up on today's podcast, I have a chat with Alex Lifeson of Rush, going back to 2010 when Rush was doing something very odd for a band. They were both recording a new album and heading out on tour at the same time. Like I said, going back to 2010, that is coming up. If you would be so kind as to hit me with a like on the Ken Calvert Show fan page on Facebook, and you can follow me on Twitter if you would like, at Ken Calvert Show. Today's podcast is an aggregate of thoughts. I love the word aggregate, by the way. So whenever I have a chance to use it, I do. Today's podcast is an aggregate of thoughts I've had over the past couple of days. I'd like to start with food as I do this podcast. Go out of the voice now, Ken, and become normal again. Please, thank you. As I do this podcast, I couldn't help but notice that today, April 5th, a Friday, is National Deep Dish Pizza Day. Now, I think that every city claims to not only have the best pizza, but somehow every city tries to claim that they invented pizza. I had this discussion with a former partner of mine, and we were talking about the various names that people apply to a pizza. And we were talking about, some people call it a pie. Hey, you want to get a pie? You want to order a pie? Sure, let's do that. And a guy was telling me that his Navy buddies used to call it a wheel. Never heard of that one. Hey, you guys want to order a wheel? Pizza is a great topic if you're on the radio, when you're out of ideas or things to do, and you could always throw out the question, hey, what's the strangest thing anyone has ever ordered on their pizza? What's the strangest thing you've ever ordered on your pizza? Now, there are people like me that love cold pizza. I love it. Most people, I think, hate it. Then there's square or round, New York style, Chicago style, thin crust, deep dish. And of course, there's usually a place within a mile of anywhere where you can get a pizza. In fact, as soon as I'm done here, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to order a pie, a wheel, a slice. Speaking of food, I wanted to mention this to you too as well. Again, getting back to my aggregate of thoughts that I've come across. I saw this the other day. Heinz has come out with another new condiment. It's called Cranch Saucy Sauce. Cranch Saucy Sauce, a combination of ketchup and ranch dressing. God, this is killing me. It complements the release of Mayo Must Saucy Sauce, which is mayo and mustard, and of course, Mayo Q Saucy Sauce, which is mayonnaise and barbecue.
What?
Wouldn't you love to have that gig? Your job is to create a new saucy sauce for Kraft. I don't know why this is making me laugh. You go in every day, check in, hit the old time clock, put on a lab coat, some glasses, and go into this room with a whole bunch of beakers and Bunsen burners and a whole bunch of other people, and you just start mixing things together, and you say, how about this? We'll do Fradish. Now, wait a minute, hear me out. It's French dressing with horseradish. Do you like it? I love it. Fradish Saucy Sauce. God, I would love that job. You see, I think everybody fools around with their shrimp cocktail sauce. Don't you always spice it up a little bit? Not too hot, but just right. Sure you do. All right, moving along, and let's see what else is going on in Ken's world right now. Like I said, today's podcast is a mixtape of things that I've come across as early as just this morning. For example, I was putting up a tweet today on Twitter. Where else would I put it? On Facebook? And it was all about REM. By definition, REM is referred to, the band this is, REM is referred to as an alternative band, and their music was considered alt music. So I got to thinking today about all the music labels we have managed to create and place on artists and sounds over the past 75 years. And for grins, I Googled list types of music. That's what I put in the search box. List types of music. And the list is single-spaced, and it's over 50 pages. Over 50 pages long. Now, just a few. We don't need the Google list for this, but I've got rock, active rock, classic rock, pop rock, country, R&B, hip-hop, the blues, alternative rock, Christian rock, classical music, punk rock, new wave rock, folk, jazz, theater music, reggae, techno, disco, swing, big band, and I even put in comedy. And that's all I got in my tank. Those are the ones that I just wrote down. But I started thinking about this, and I don't know how I got there, but I got to bring it up. Do you guys know what skiffle music is? Skiffle music. It's hard to believe, but before the 1950s, guitars were hardly ever heard in British music. Along comes skiffle music. Billy Bragg, a noted author, says the first guitars to hit the British pop scene came as a part of skiffle, a musical movement inspired by African-American roots musicians. Bragg has written a book on skiffle, and it's called Roots, Radicals, and Rockers. It describes the genre as a bunch of British schoolboys in the mid-50s playing Leadbelly's repertoire. Now, this British schoolboy's music was played on acoustic guitars, but it really was sort of a grip-it-and-rip-it style. One of the greatest performances was Lonnie Donegan's 1954 cover of Leadbelly's Rock Island Line, which Jimmy Page of Led Zeppelin later described as the song that changed his life. Billy Bragg tells us in his book that this opened the door for bands like the Beatles, Van Morrison, and all of the British rock bands that followed. Now, the one thing I can't do on a podcast, no one can, well, you can if you pay for it. The one thing I can't do on this podcast is play music, commercial music, even skiffle music. It's licensed, and you have to pay to play. If you cheat, the hosting service, iHeart, Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, you name it, they will take down the podcast and warn you. If you continue to do it, you will get a fine and you are out. So I cannot play you an example of skiffle, but I want to, but you can listen to it. Do me a favor, please do this. When you get a chance, go to YouTube and put this in the search box. Jimmy Page, 14 years old. That's what I want you to put in the search box on YouTube. Jimmy Page, 14 years old. You will hear what skiffle sounds like, and a 14-year-old Jimmy Page playing a mean-ass guitar. The sound reminds me of early country music, and then moving forward, I'm reminded of bands like the Stray Cats, or maybe even the King Bees. I think you'll see what I'm saying when you see this and listen to it on YouTube, but you gotta do that, please. All right, my friends, I think it's time to get on with that circa interview going back to 2010 when I got together with Alex Lifeson. Until about 2018, it was a very uncertain future for Alex Lifeson and the band Rush, and he reluctantly declared in January of 2018 that the band Rush had disbanded. They were done. The R40 Live Tour was the final tour by the Canadian rock band, and it commemorated the 40th anniversary of drummer Neil Peart's joining the band in July of 1974. The R40 tour began on May 8th, 2015 in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and it ended August 1st, 2015, with two of the shows being recorded and filmed, and that was done on June 17th and 19th at the Air Canada Centre in Toronto. Now, a lot of fans like me have a tough time wrapping my brain around the fact that they are completely retired, they're done, they're finished, never to be together again. and especially the fans of the drummer, Neil Peart. Geddy Lee said Neil Peart is retired. He hasn't just retired from Rush, he has retired from drumming. One of the greatest drummers ever, friends, greatest ever. The band's 2016 documentary, Time Stands Still, revealed that Peart was battling enormous physical pain through much and most of the tour, including a foot infection that made it agonizing for him to even walk, let alone play that massive set of drums. So what is Alex Lifeson up to? Well, in addition to his own music, he's a painter, avid golfer, licensed aircraft pilot, and part owner of the Orbit Room, a bar and restaurant located in Toronto, Canada. Could there be life for Rush without Neil Peart on drums? Andy Green of Rolling Stone magazine wrote on October 23, 2018, "Could there be life for Rush without Neil Peart?" We outlined 3 ways in which the music of Rush could continue to exist on the concert circuit now that their legendary drummer is retired. Carry on as Rush with a new drummer. The idea of Rush without Neil Peart may seem sacrilegious to many fans, but it does have a precedent. For the first 6 years of the band's existence, Alex and Geddy's teenage buddy John Rutsey was behind the kit. Now, with that said, Peart was an infinitely better drummer than Rutsey was when he was originally with the band many, many years ago, and with his help, they became the Rush that everybody knows today. Fans would be bitterly disappointed to see a Peart-free Rush, but if the only option is no Rush at all and Peart gives the tour his blessing, they would sell a ton of tickets. The value of that name is enormous. If Journey can play stadiums without Steve Perry, Rush can certainly carry on without Neil Peart. Number 2, they could simply change their name. And number 3, Geddy Lee goes solo with his own group of musicians. Those would be the 3 options that some form of Rush could possibly go back out and entertain the masses. So here's Alex Lifeson and me just having a chat about the Time Machine tour that ran from June 29, 2010 through July 2nd, 2011. When these guys are out on the road, they are out on the road. Here's Alex Lifeson, and I'll see you guys soon.
It's my honor, privilege, pleasure to speak with Alex Lifeson from Rush. Touring this summer, I like to think, Alex, that Detroit is one of the markets where you guys absolutely started soaring in your career.
Well, Detroit has always been super important to us. We love the area. We've been there on every tour.
Alex, I got to ask you a couple of quick questions. How is it, I'm sure it's been done before, but the question is simply this. How is it that you tour while recording at the same time?
That's something that we typically don't do. This time around, we had some spare time. We wanted to do a couple of songs for the tour that were new songs that we hadn't recorded. Once we started writing, everything came so fast, we ended up writing 6 songs. And then 2 songs, the 2 songs that we wanted to play live. Now we had the time to record them and see how they would go. So we just finished recording them last week. They sound awesome. They'll go to radio probably in a few weeks' time as a single release, and then both songs will be released at the start of the tour. I mean, we don't normally do it that way, and there's a real benefit to doing that, coming back after a tour and continuing writing and recording and playing. I mean, you're in top form, so we're really looking forward to having that opportunity.
You said something very interesting, and I want to follow up on that, and then I want to get into more the topography of the tour and what's going to be going down, because you will be featuring moving pictures in its entirety, which I love that concept, and more bands are starting to do that sort of theme throughout. But you said that the songs were coming so quickly. That surprises me, because normally bands have a difficult time getting it up and rolling. It apparently is not the case with Rush this time around.
Well, we've been at it for a long time, and we're older. And yes, usually when you're older, it is tougher to get it up. But it seems to be working okay this time around. We had a year and a half off. So both Geddy and I were really eager to get back at it. And once we started, everything came very quickly. Now, typically, it does take a while to just get warmed up, and some of the stuff you write in the beginning is something that you don't really stick with later on, but everything was really coming back at us very positively. So it was quick to get to that position of having half a dozen songs and then being able to make some decisions about those.
Who makes those decisions?
We all do collectively.
Okay.
Nick Reskulinitz, our co-producer, came up before we went into do the preliminary recording with Neil, where he gets familiar with the songs in Toronto. And then we make all those sort of decisions at that time, all the final arrangement decisions, and any other little tweaks we want to do.
Whose idea was it to do moving pictures in its entirety?
Well, for a long time we've been debating whether we want to bring Camera Eye back on the road. That's a song we hadn't played since the album was recorded back in the early 80s. It's a long song. I think it's over 10 minutes, and it would take up such a big chunk of our show. With the presentation of the whole album, we could then include it and then deal with it. Camera Eye has always been the most requested song from Rush fans for us to do live, so it allows us to finally address that.
I'm so glad to hear you say that the fans requested that. It seems to me that on occasion, sometimes the artists sort of forget that we really are out there and that we are the fans. And when we do go see the shows, I know it's difficult on occasion to not play a lot of or some of the new material. But after all, it all started with the songs that we grew up with and we fell in love with, and we still like to hear those.
Well, you're right. That's the magic of music. You connect yourself to so many things in your life, to the song that you were listening to that at that moment. And we understand that, and we're well aware of it. I think for an artist, you always want to do your most current stuff. It's the most challenging. It's the freshest for you. But certainly as an entertainer, you have to balance out the set and make sure that you're really living up to your value as an entertainer to your audience. And ultimately, they want to hear, a good selection of older material. And it's, we have so much of it, and the show's over 3 hours, so I think we managed to satisfy everybody that way.
What's it like to be alongside one of the iconic drummers?
Well, yeah, he's a continuing work. He never rests on his laurels. I mean, he's been working on different aspects of his drumming for a very long time.
Yeah.
The guy is amazing. I mean, he truly is. Being standing beside him or in front of him and feeling his drums behind me is an amazing feeling.
I bet it is.
The subtleties in his playing, I think, sometimes go unnoticed, but the guy is just amazing.
Alex Lifeson, my guest, and it's so nice to talk to you again. A powerhouse, a threesome that comes out and just rocks your world, like you said, for 3 hours. So I have to go to the genesis of your guitar wizardry, if you will. It started by listening to who?
Well, as a young kid growing up, I listened to the Beach Boys. I loved the sound of the Beach Boys, the twinkling guitar sound. But of course, once Jimi Hendrix came by, I forgot all of that and became totally a huge fan of his. And Pete Townsend, Jimmy Page from Led Zeppelin, of course, and Eric Clapton, from Cream, and Jeff Beck. And they were really the foundation of my playing.
I've seen Jeff Beck on a number of occasions and still absolutely blows me away.
He is incredible.
Unbelievable, as a matter of fact. If you were to go see another band or an artist and they elected to do an album in its entirety, give me the band or the artist and the album that you would most want to hear in its entirety.
Oh, that's a tough question.
Well,
there's so much great music, but if I could hear Led Zeppelin play their first album in its entirety, that would be a real trip for me. That would take me back. That was such a time for us. We just started the band. I was 15 years old. They were such an enormous influence on us, and I worked so hard to try to figure those songs out, from my crappy little record player with all the pennies on the arm to weight it down.
Yeah.
I think that would be just an incredible nostalgic experience for me.
If there was a guy that you would just sit there and your jaw would drop, who would that be?
Well, certainly Jimmy Page was that guy for me.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there are lots of great guys that have come and gone that have been jaw-dropping. You know, you mentioned Jeff Beck. He takes the fact that he's a musician very, very seriously and very passionately. And that is a marvel to see and a testament to a great musician and something that all musicians should aspire to.
Well, you are such a pleasant guy to talk with, and we have so many Canadian listeners that I'm sure they're just loving every moment of this, and thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us today.
My pleasure, Ken. Thank you.
All right, Alex, and we'll talk again soon, my friend.
All righty.
You can subscribe to the Ken Calvert Show podcast on Apple iTunes, TuneIn, Stitcher, Spotify, or iHeartRadio. It's also available by going directly to www.thekencalvertshow.com. You can reach Ken at kencalvertpodcast@gmail.com. The preceding program is the property of Ken Calvert and may not be rebroadcast without the written permission of Ken Calvert.